It's okay not to be okay, but I promise I'm trying by rayrae118. Chapter 27, Part 2. And indeed, shadows were popping into existence around them. Voldemort's Death Eaters were rejoining their master. Harry lost track of time for a while, as Voldemort waxed on about how his followers had betrayed him, and gave Wormtail a replacement hand of silver, only paying attention enough to make note of the names he heard. Malfoy was no surprise, but he also vowed to remember Crabbe, Goyle, Avery, and McNair. He was much more interested in trying to think of an escape plan. Cedric was still petrified and disillusioned, and he knew he would need to get them both out. From their position, he knew the Hufflepuff could see everything from his location, and felt guilty for what he had done. If they both made it out of this, the older boy was sure to kill him. Voldemort turned his attention to Harry, and the teenage wizard forced himself to pay attention, as the Dark Lord remarked on how the sharing of blood meant his mother's protection was null and void, and proved it by touching Harry's scar. A searing pain burst into existence behind his forehead, and Harry struggled not to pass out. He then followed it up with the Cruciatus Curse, causing Harry to feel like his very veins were melting. His bones creaked, and he had to grit his teeth to keep from screaming. Voldemort used the curse 3 times before Harry broke and screamed out. He then cut the ropes that bound Harry to the grave, and smiled as the boy fell to the ground. "Give him back his wand, Wormtail. You have been taught how to duel, have you not, Harry Potter?" Harry got to his feet slowly, as Pettigrew pressed his wand into his hand. "Come, come!" Voldemort's voice was silky. "First, we must bow." Harry made no move to do so. Voldemort frowned. "Imperio! Bow, Harry Potter!" Harry felt the caressing voice tell him what to do, what the Dark Lord told him, but he was able to ignore it, and shook his head. "If you want to kill me, let's just get on with it," he growled, before casting a blasting hex to the gravestone behind Voldemort and ducking behind another stone, as several Death Eaters cried out in pain. "No one touches the boy!" Voldemort's voice carried over the sound of falling rocks. "He's mine!" Harry ducked and ran, casting spells every chance he got, moving quickly to avoid being hit in retaliation. After a few minutes, a lucky shot ended up connecting with Voldemort's killing curse, and Harry couldn't let go. A strange connection was forming between their wands, and a bead of light was making its way down the bonds towards him. He instinctively knew he couldn't let it touch his wand, so he began pushing back with all his might. The bead of light started moving in the other direction, and as it touched Voldemort's wand, wisps of smoke began to shoot out of it. A loose golden web formed around them, and Harry watched in amazement as the smoke wisps began to form into people. The first person he recognised as a ministry employee that had gone missing the previous summer. Next was an unknown man, and then his parents appeared, one after the other. Harry felt tears form in his eyes. "Mom? Dad?" His voice was barely above a whisper. The ghost-like Lily Potter was crying unashamedly. "Harry, my son, we are so proud of you." James was also tearing up. "You have done so well, Harry, but you need to get out of here. We can linger for only a moment, so get yourself to the portkey as quickly as possible, and get yourself out." Harry nodded, staring at his parents hungrily. Lily smiled. "We love you, Harry. Now go. Live for us. Break the connection." With a great wrench, Harry tore his wand away, and the ghost images of the dead emerged together to surround Voldemort, as Harry ran to where he knew he had left Cedric. He felt the still invisible boy as he lifted his wand and cried out, "Accio Portkey!" The cup came flying towards him as the mist disappeared. So did Harry and Cedric. As soon as they arrived back on Hogwarts grounds, there was a great deal of confusion. Harry immediately released the cup and released Cedric from the full body bind before lifting the disillusionment charm. Cedric sat up, looking haunted. "Harry." He didn't seem to know what to say. Harry looked down, worried. "I'm sorry, Cedric, but it was me they wanted, and if they found you, you would be dead. I couldn't let that happen. Cedric nodded, but his expression told Harry they would talk about it later, as their guardians descended on them. Cedric's parents immediately flocked to him, while Sirius, Remus and Minerva seemed determined to make sure he was in one piece. Ginny felt when Harry had returned. She could hear him again, feel him in her mind, which relieved her beyond all measure. His disappearance had terrified her, and she remembered how he had felt when she had been under the spell in the lake during the second task. Every now and then she would get bursts of feeling, pain and fear, but she didn't know what was happening, which only made it worse. She was about to run to Harry when a movement out of the corner of her eye drew her attention. Moody appeared to be making his way towards the exit. A glance at Hermione and Neville standing on either side of her and a short distance away told her they had seen it too. They cautiously and surreptitiously made their way towards the defence professor. A little ways away, Susan and Ron were also closing in. When they were close enough, all 5 of them began firing stunners. Caught in the crossfire, Moody didn't stand a chance. He went down hard, and the students surrounding him, looking at one another, trying to figure out what to do next. "What is the meaning of this?" Minerva had seen their actions and separated from Harry to join them. Harry, seeing his friends, allowed his guardian, and Sirius, Remus and Amelia followed Harry. Cedric also looked like he wanted to join them, but his parents were currently holding him in place and didn't look like they would be willing to let him go any time soon. Dumbledore and Snape also separated themselves from the crowds in time to hear the students' explanation. Ginny explained about Harry's misgivings, causing her boyfriend to raise an eyebrow. He definitely hadn't told her that. She and Hermione told the group how they had kept an eye on him after Harry and Cedric disappeared, seeing that his behaviour was rather odd. When the 2 students had returned, he had tried to escape, so Ginny and the others had stunned him. Ginny immediately went to her boyfriend's side while the adults deliberated. Hermione's eyes narrowed as she noted the flask Moody always carried around. It was lying on the ground next to him, as if it had fallen out of his pocket. She picked it up and sniffed it curiously. Her eyes widened. "Harry!" she gasped, passing him the vial. Harry took it and gave it a sniff. "Polyjuice," he agreed, nodding at his friend. Snape's eyes narrowed. "And just how would you know what that smells like, Potter?" he sneered. Harry just shrugged, handing the flask to Minerva in Amelia's protruding hand. His other hand remained firmly clasped in Ginny's. Amelia's eyes narrowed as she sniffed the brew herself and turned back to whoever it was lying stunned on the ground. A muttered spell had him bound securely. "Now, Amelia, is that really necessary?" Dumbledore asked, eyes twinkling. Amelia glared at the headmaster. "Albus, whoever is not Alistair Moody. I want to know who he is and why he is impersonating your professor. Later, you and I will discuss how it is you are unaware of an imposter in your midst for an entire year, especially since it was someone you supposedly were to be great friends with." Their eyes were drawn to the man bound to the ground as his skin began to bubble. The magical eye burst out and rolled away, and the fake leg was pushed down as a real one grew in its place. Amelia gasped. "Barty Crouch Jr. Harry looked confused, but the other adults seemed just as shocked. "He died years ago. In Azkaban, didn't he?" Minerva looked like she didn't believe her eyes. "Apparently not." They all looked at Neville, shocked at the growl in his throat. With a start, Harry remembered that Crouch Jr. had been with the Lestrangers when they tortured his parents into insanity. He gave Susan a pointed look, which the Hufflepuff immediately understood, since she immediately went to stand by her boyfriend's side, grasping his hand and whispering in his ear. Slowly, Neville relaxed, and without a backwards glance, Susan led him away towards the castle, still whispering reassuringly. Amelia smiled at her niece's reactions, pleased at the relationship those two appeared to have, before she returned her attention to the escaped criminal in front of her. "Albus, I believe I will be taking this man with me. He is a criminal, and I want to find out what he was doing here." Dumbledore looked like he wanted to protest, but he already knew that he was in the proverbial doghouse with this group, so he just sighed and nodded before turning to Harry. "Harry, my boy, let us go to my office, so that we may talk about the events this evening." He made to pull the boy with him, but Minerva was suddenly there. Albus was disconcerted to discover her wand was in her hand. "Harry will be going to the hospital wing, Albus. You will have a chance to speak with him after he has been cleared by Poppy, and only if Harry allows it." Dumbledore tried to protest, but Minerva just led Harry back to the castle. Harry still grasping Ginny's hand tightly. Before he made it, Harry turned back, his eyes haunted. He's back. Voldemort's back. His words caused a chill to settle over the group as the implications set in. Minerva gave him a one-armed hug and led the two Gryffindors up to the hospital wing. End of chapter 27. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed this. I really like that they kept Cedric alive, my, homeboy Hufflepuff and all that. I'm a very proud Badger. Whoa, that was intense as well, wasn't it, guys? Remember to like, comment and subscribe, and click that little bell to get notified whenever I will upload a chapter, so that you get a notice about that. Sorry, stumbling over my words today. Remember to follow me on Twitter, and I will see you in the next chapter, my guys, gals and non-binary pals. Bye!